hypothesis many years ago was that happy employees means happy customers, and happy customers means a great market perception. A great market perception means a better bottom line for everyone. And that really has to start with happy employees. If the people who
Yeah.
are engaging with your customers don't believe in the product, don't believe in what they're doing, they are miserable. No matter what happy face they put on Zoom calls or how many exclamation points they use in their emails, that's going to come through.
And once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Success Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as I seek out and interview leaders and practitioners who are innovating and building great scaled CS programs. My goal is to share what I've learned and to bring you along with me for the ride so that you get the insights that you need to build and evolve your own digital CS program. If you'd like more info, want to get in touch or sign up for the latest updates, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. And if you have a question or commentary to be used in an upcoming episode, call us and leave a message at 512-222-7381. For now, let's get started. Well, we made it to episode 20 of the Digital Customer Success Podcast. For those of you who listen regularly, welcome back. For those of you who are new, glad you're here. Today we have a fantastic episode with Alyssa Nolte of LIFT. You may be familiar with LIFT from all the various products and services that they provide to the CS community. In this conversation, we get into the weeds on some CS fundamentals in relation to digital. So we do talk a lot about the customer life cycle, turning CSMs from cost centers to profit centers, personalization of digital content. And one of the things that we dig into that I found most fascinating is the inclusion of employee satisfaction or employee happiness, if you will, into a customer sentiment score. The theory being that if you have happy employees, your customers are likely to be more engaged and happier as well. We dig into all of this and more in this conversation with Alyssa Nolte that I hope you'll enjoy because I sure did. Alyssa Nolte, very welcome to the podcast. Super happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. You are interesting. I always do a little bit of LinkedIn stalking prior to starting these things because you kind of have to. And you talk about in your profile and also your history, you talk about your kind of I guess you might consider it trial by fire in kind of growing your professional career in a research startup from, I think it was like, you know, as you do in startups, you start as like an account manager and then you end up as chief whatever it was that you were there. But you know, that's a pretty cool set of experiences. One of my biggest mentors always kind of said that, you know, operating in a startup for more than a year or two is like basically getting a business, you know, an MBA, which I totally agree with. But anyway, I will stop taking the words out of your mouth. I would love to know a little bit more about kind of your history and your CS origin story, if you will.
Yeah, I often joke with people that if I ever write a book someday or, you know, do a keynote speech someday, it's going to be taking an unpaid job straight out of college. So I came across this company, and company is probably using it as a strong word. It was two college professors who were doing something that I thought was really cool. They had eye tracking technology that allows you to see what people are looking at when they're looking on a computer screen. And I thought that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I have this distinct memory, and I'm sure my former co-founder has a similar but quite different story. I remember knocking on his office door and just grilling him about this company he was in the process of starting. And I ended with something to the effect of, do you have anyone to do your sales and marketing? And he said, well, no, because we're just like an academic output. And I said, okay, great. My name is Alyssa and I work here now. And I basically just shoved my way into their company. And then it turned out to be a really great thing. I learned all kinds of skills. I learned lead acquisition. I had to cold call. I had to learn how to position products and services in a way that people wanted to buy them. I learned how to scope projects and creatively problem solve. And then I figured out how to take the other side of that coin and retain clients and keep people coming back for more. So really definitely trial by fire of having to learn things that I never learned before, never envisioned myself doing.
For sure. Um, how what was your kind of education environment when you were in the mix? Like, were you just like figuring it out as you went, like on your own, just kind of brute force style? Did you have kind of people around you that you surrounded yourself with that you learned from? Like, what was that experience like?
A little bit of both. I
Hmm.
consider myself a very creative problem solver, as I think a lot of people in our profession are. You have to be quick on your feet and open to the idea of doing things a little bit differently than you were taught or is the conventional way. I got
Yeah.
really heavily involved with finding mentors. I went to every meetup I could of seasoned business professionals and seasoned entrepreneurs. I talked to them, I asked them questions. I had abundant curiosity. And
Mm.
I did it without having something in it for me, right? The idea is not, I'm going to try to sell you on whatever I'm trying to sell, but rather really authentic relationships and trying to figure out what's the best course of action for my company and my product and the thing we're trying to push.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's all about authentic, relationships and communication, and I think these days it's super easy to like disappear in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Even if you network a ton on LinkedIn, like, there's nothing like those kind of in person, even if they're virtual meetups.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. There's a local Austin CS ops meetup that I attended my first one recently. Um, Shout out to Matthew Lind. But it was just nice being in the same room with other people who were having issues and talking about their issues and
Right.
problem solving together. There's nothing quite like that.
Yeah, they do something in my neck of the woods, which is in Iowa, and
Uh-huh.
it's called Failure Fireside Chats. And you bring in successful business owners who basically just give you the dark underbelly of every mistake they've ever made and what they learned of it, instead of talking about your great successes and doing the keynote that's inspirational. It's literally just a conversation about every mistake they ever made and how you can avoid it yourself.
I love that so much. That's like amazing insight, and we're done. We'll see ya. No, like,
Well, good. I mean,
like
that was great.
that was fast. Yeah, I love that so much because you're right. Like, a lot of that is like self promotion, and like, and there's a time and place for that for sure. But like, bring in your failures because that's how we all learn. I learn more from hearing about your failures than hearing about the cool thing you did that you maybe didn't do.
Right. And not only that, but just that moment of, I'm failing, I'm failing, I'm failing. Is this ever going to work? And then to see someone whose company just got acquired by a major brand name say, I failed, I failed, I failed until I found one lucky chance, one lucky
Mm,
opportunity, and then I took off. So it was just
yeah.
really like heartening to hear that failure is a part of the process, not the end of the process.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So, and then talk to me a little bit about your transition into Lyft, which is where you are now. I think you're chief of staff basically at Lyft currently, right?
Yeah, yeah. Essentially, I get to be the creative problem solver, the jack of all trades, the entrepreneur in residence, however you want to, categorize it. So
Uh-huh.
my company, the one that I had started with that college professor in his, college office during office hours 10 years ago, we got acquired by Lyft in 2020, January 1, 2020, pre-pandemic. And Lyft was a customer success company. Prior to that, my whole company was focused on customer acquisition and smoothing the decision process. How do we get
Yeah.
customers to go from, I want to learn about your product to, I'm ready to buy your product? And then my journey kind of stopped at the onboarding when it came time to actually use the product and experience that product.
Sure.
Lyft did the other side of it. So they were focused on, now that you've purchased the product, let's make the most of it. Let's make sure that you really enjoy your experience, that you get the maximum return on investment, and that renewal is a guarantee rather than a question. So we came together, and rather than say, okay, we're only going to focus on acquisition or we're only going to focus on customer retention, we're focused on the entire life cycle and breaking down that invisible barrier between what the salespeople promise and what the product actually has to deliver. So our goal is total life cycle focus, because in reality, the customer journey doesn't start with just deciding to buy, doesn't end with just deciding to onboard. It's that entire life cycle from beginning to end and around forever.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. No business ever has had the issue of things being said pre-sale and not being true post-sale. That
Yeah,
doesn't
and
exist. That's
it
not a
blows
problem.
my mind how much companies will invest into customer acquisition and getting the customer to say yes, and then completely disregard
Just to blow it. Yeah.
just to blow it when when they're at home base. So it's really exciting to see a lot of companies starting to pivot towards that new reality of full customer lifecycle and investing in the customer during onboarding and beyond. However, it's not enough yet, in my view, in my opinion, to really see companies focusing on the customer as the heartbeat of their organization above
Yeah.
anything else.
I think a lot of customers just realize, or a lot of companies just realize it's not easy, right? What we're
No,
talking about isn't it sounds easy, like when you just say it, but it's not easy. That's
no.
why a lot of people don't do it.
Right. It is incredibly difficult. And in my experience, a lot of our customer success teams get positioned as a cost center. They
Mm,
cost the company money. They don't earn the company money because they're not fully owning that relationship, that customer retention, that customer renewal relationship, and not telling that story of, I'm not a cost center, I'm a profit center. I'm the reason that the
mhm.
company continues to function, not a drag on your bottom line.
Yeah, precisely, precisely. And I think that mindset shift is more and more it's taking hold, and especially you know the kind of cruddy environment we find ourselves in here in August of 23, which is to say that the economy isn't great. There's layoffs happening all over the place. We have to be much more efficient with our teams. We have to protect our customer, from churning and those kinds of things. And so CS has quickly become much more relevant even than it was a few years ago, I'd say. Um, so kind of speaking of CS and the economy and doing, I hate the term more with less, but being more efficient and things like that. This is the Digital CS podcast where we focus on those kinds of things. And I would love your kind of elevator pitch definition of digital customer success, which is something that I basically ask all of my guests.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's about prioritization and personalization. There is a time and a place to have these conversations, and there's a way to do it that makes it feel like a truly authentic conversation. For me, it's about collecting the information and only the information that you need so you're not wearing out your customers, making
Mhm.
sure that the reach outs are authentic. I came across a LinkedIn post a couple of days ago that said, I only ever heard from my account manager a month out from renewal, and therefore we will be moving on from this company. So it's about making sure that your touches in your relationships are built incrementally, bite sized, regular cadences, regular communication that feels authentic, that reflects their personal goals. And you can do that at scale through various technology platforms, prioritization and personalization.
Prioritization, personalization. I love it. Personalization. That's a big one, right? Because you got to know who your customer is and who your contacts are
Right,
before you can really start to personalize.
right.
That's like,
And it's not
yeah,
that hard.
there's
You don't have to know everything about them, but simple things like spelling their name right when you send out an email and try to connect with them, remembering their goals and the reasons that they purchased that software or product or tool in the first place, and asking simple questions like, hey, I know you, insert token from our CRM software, whatever your goal was. How is that
yeah.
going for you? And asking those open ended questions to get feedback and responsiveness and show that you really care.
hmm I love nothing more than seeing form emails that are sent out where it's like hello and then somebody's first name in all caps. It's like
Right.
the,
Hello, dear
it's like
sir or madam would probably be better than spelling my name wrong.
probably dear valued customer.
Dear valued customer. Exactly. Exactly. It's not that hard. And with technology these days, there's not really an excuse to have that kind
hmm
of communication anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, tell me a little bit about Lyft and, kind of the genesis of it. Obviously, you were part of an acquisition
Mhm.
into Lyft. But what place does Lyft hold within that whole digital customer lifecycle?
So I mentioned prioritization. That's really our main focus. Our work is primarily around customer intimacy research and understanding what do your customers think about you? How can you use this information to be more specific and to be more focused on the customers who need your attention? Either if they need your attention for renewal or if they're an expansion opportunity, there's an opportunity to grow your footprint in their tech stack or in their environment, or if they're doing great and you can leave them alone for a little while because there is such a
Yeah.
thing as too much attention. So helping our clients use research and data to do more than just give you a pretty dashboard, but to actually inform decision making and help you point your limited resources towards the customers that need the most attention in this exact moment. We were
Mm-hmm.
founded by two former Cisco sellers who left to do the consultancy side of things. And they really helped pioneer customer success at Cisco. And that legacy of customer success is continuing to grow as other similar companies continue to build those programs as well.
Yeah, that's cool. The notion of prioritization is an important one, and prioritizing on obviously on customers where there is an indicator of trouble is
Right.
something that that we all aspire to do. Some with more success than others. And I'd love to get an opinion or an insight from you in terms of what does best in class look like, specific to, let's say, churn prediction, or just an indicator of issues. Like, what does that really look like to you when you're speaking with customers, or really trying to do it on your own? What kind of indicators do you typically look for?
We tend to think about so we often say people aren't trying to lie to you, they're not trying to be deceitful, they just often can't articulate what they're experiencing. So a
Hmm.
question like NPS, would you be likely to re- renew this, or would you be likely to refer this to a friend? That's not a bad
Right.
question, it's good data. But at the end of the day, the biggest predictor of someone churning is not a zero on their NPS, it is a no response to the NPS. If they are
Mm.
ignoring your NPS, that is the highest likelihood of churn. So we're not focused necessarily on their specific product and the way that they are engaging with the product, their usage analytics, their telemetry, however you want to track that. We are treating the brand and the company that they're working with as a friend. I would say things to you like, I trust this brand to deliver on their promises. Has nothing to do with their software or your experience with it. I can depend on this brand. This brand brings value to my organization. When it comes time to renew, I'm going to give them the first shot at my business. Questions like that. And then we have something that we call the Tide test. If I were to say laundry detergent, the first brand that's going to pop into your brain is Tide. Well, that's
Mhm.
because everybody knows that Tide is laundry detergent and laundry detergent is Tide. So we want to focus on building that positive recognition with your brand and what you do, so that when someone says video conferencing, the word Zoom comes out. When someone says laundry detergent, you hear Tide, so that you get that top of mind recognition. So we're focused on a more holistic, personal relationship with the brand beyond the experience that they have with your software, tool, services, whatever you're selling.
Yeah, I love what you said about NPS in the first part of your answer, because to me, the value in NPS has always been kind of one thing, which is not the score itself, but
Mhm.
it's the context around the score, and the actual mouth words that are being submitted along with the score. But
Right.
I'll amend that to say, actually, I like the notion of, like, people that just don't respond to NPS because they don't have people that give you a zero. Hey, guess what? There's a dialogue happening. There's something you can jump in on. But the people that aren't responding, it's like, well, kind of in the dark.
Right. When your customer starts to ghost you, that's when you know all is lost.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. um One of the things, when we talked prior to recording this episode, that I found, and it is basically part of your approach, but that I found especially intriguing was the inclusion of not just like customer sentiment and customer health into kind of a predictor, but then also your employee experience,
Yeah.
and how that plays into keeping your customers healthy. And it makes complete sense when you think about that. But I'd love some insight from you in terms of your approach towards including employee sentiment into customer sentiment.
Yeah. So you've heard me talk about two key areas. We measure customer experience and sentiment. We measure market perception, experience and sentiment, right? People who aren't your customers yet. The third piece that we measure in kind of our triad of customer experience tracking is employee experience. And our hypothesis many years ago was that happy employees means happy customers, and happy customers means a great market perception. A great market perception means a better bottom line for everyone. And that really has to start with happy employees. If the people
Yeah.
who are engaging with your customers don't believe in the product, don't believe in what they're doing, they are miserable. No matter what happy face they put on Zoom calls or how many exclamation points they use in their emails, that's going to come through. That non-authentic, dishonest feeling is going to come through at some point. And so if
Yeah.
you can make sure that your employees feel proud and supportive, if they would recommend working here to anyone that they talk to, then that is going to show through in their experiences with their customers, and your customers are therefore going to feel more connected to your brand, to your organization.
Yeah. How interesting. It's so true that I've been on QBRs and customer calls, both as a customer and as an employee or a leader or whatever, where it is evident that whoever's doing the talking is just like kind of phoning it in. They
Yep.
made the deck. They spent a lot of time on the deck, knowing full well that somebody wasn't really gonna look at the deck. Um, they're just kind of like rinse and repeat. Maybe getting ready for being yelled at or something like that. Like it's just like
Right.
there's nothing worse than being on those calls and you just know that the person leading the calls just isn't isn't digging it, isn't happy. But then on the flip side, I've been on those calls where it's just like there's passion, there's enthusiasm, there's like, a real sense of like, hey, we're going to take care of you, we're taking you under our wing, this is what we're going to be able to do for you, etc., etc. And the difference is night and day.
It is. And part of it, for a lot of people, it's not their fault. They are, if they're phoning it in. We
Yeah.
talked earlier about having to do more with less. I had a conversation recently with a company has 1,700 accounts and 9 CSMs to service all of them. And I just can't imagine the amount of work that it takes for those 9 to do anything that feels personal or custom or enthusiastic when you have that many accounts on yearly subscriptions that you have to keep up with, and
Yep.
you're new to customer success. It's your first ever CS job and you're thrown into that experience. There's only so much a person can take, and faking it all day every day takes a lot of energy. And if that's your job, is to do that all day, that's got to be exhausting. You can't expect people to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And also the belief in the product,
Yeah.
I've worked for some companies where I just did not believe in the product, and
Right.
it that just compounds the issue. Not only are you like overworked and stuff like that, but the stuff you're saying is just lip service and taken off a script. So
Right. It's almost like, when you call into a place and it's like, this call is being recorded for training purposes, right?
hmm
Like people have that I'm being recorded for training purposes, so I better watch what I say kind of attitude. And that's not the person you want. You want the person who would say the same thing about your product, whether you were in the room or not. You want to be your own champion, because you can't create champions if you don't even champion what you're putting out there.
yeah, yeah, precisely. I'd like to shift just for a second into more, customer journey oriented discussion, because I know that's something that you're um, that you're into and passionate about as well. And I guess my first thought when I hear the word customer journey is that it it tends to be something that a lot of companies talk about,
Yeah.
um, do some workshops around, maybe some great workshops. Pull cross-functional teams in, agree on the customer journey, build a cool PowerPoint. Maybe some process improvement projects are identified, but invariably, that's when it just kind of falls off. It sits on a shelf. It kind of collects dust, and then at some point, a couple years later, they go back and go, "Okay, well, we should do that again." Um,
Right.
so I guess talk to me a little bit about your experience with designing customer journeys that are effective, and also then just implementing them so that they're actually utilized in the way that they're intended.
Yeah, we are primarily a research company. So we spend a lot of our time talking to customers, trying to tease out, what do they want their journey to look like? How can we smooth the journey to align with the company's goals? But we have a couple of rules when we work with customers and we work with organizations. The biggest rule is that there's no ego in this process.
Mm,
We agree
mm,
on the vision that we're trying to achieve, which is the best possible experience for customers aligned to our strategic goals. Ego has no place in that. Just because you're the highest paid person in the room doesn't mean that you are right, doesn't mean that you get to call the final shots. The goal here is to do what's best and has the greatest impact for the organization. The other thing we focus on is not goals. There's no goals here. We're talking about impact. What are the decisions that we can make in our customer journey that are going to have the greatest impact, not achieve an artificial vanity goal or achieve something that is something that looks good on paper we get to talk about in our next executive one-on-one, but what is actually going to move the needle for the customer, for the organization, to ensure that we are all on the same page, that we are doing the right things for the customer as the centric piece. So there's been clients before that we just didn't mesh with because they wanted us to come in and confirm their suspicions
mm.
rather than help them develop the most impactful experience for their customers, for their brand.
It's amazing how many times a customer journey isn't actually the customer journey. It's your internal journey with your processes and procedures around what you think needs to happen. And it doesn't take into account, like, your customer gets this email here and this email here and this survey here and this stuff here. And this is what you sound like as most customer journeys that I've seen, or a lot of them that I've been involved in, they start out as this thing like, okay, this is our process. Okay, great. That's the customer journey.
Right, right. And the customer doesn't have the context that you
Yeah,
have. Of course,
right.
you understand why we're going to do this survey right now because we want information to make XYZ decision. The customer doesn't have that context, and nor do they care that you need this
Mm-hmm.
information to make a certain decision or you need them to follow a certain path in order to achieve something. The customer cares that they have made a decision, they're ready to buy, and I should be able to do that right now and I should be able to do it this way because that's what makes sense intuitively to me. So the goal is to
Yeah,
design the process and the experience around the most number of customers and how they expect it to function, and then slot in your own ways of working around that, not the other way around.
totally. Um, one of the companies I worked for, we did a customer journey exercise, and one of the things that came out of it that I actually thought was an incredible idea, and for some reason we never actually implemented it, but I still want to implement it at some point, was this thing we called Pizza Tracker.
Okay.
Because customers, like you said, they lack the context around where they are in the process, what's happening, what's next, and what's previous, like what do they need to provide, et cetera, et cetera. So we were like, well, when I order a pizza from X chain, I get an email, it takes me to a site, and guess what, there's like a little tracker. Your pizza's in the
Yeah.
oven, your pizza's being delivered, or well, your pizza has arrived. It's like the pizza tracker.
Right.
And
I
it's like
love
a
that.
simple thing that illustrates where a customer is in the process, and that even just a couple of words in an image can convey so much and give the customer so much confidence in not only knowing kind of where they are in the journey, but also knowing that you, the vendor, kind of know about me, the customer. And it's little things like that. So I totally agree with what you're saying about
I love the
kind of
pizza
the
tracker. I think that's
the pizza tracker.
everyone needs to do something like that because
Yeah.
we forget that we understand everything that's happening. We know what's going on. This is old hat for us. We don't realize that this might be their first time doing anything like
Mm-hmm.
this, that it might all be new to them. Think about I just dropped my kid off for third grade this year. He gets to go upstairs in the elementary school, single day
Ooh,
school, big deal going upstairs. And
totally.
he gets a locker. And I'm like, all of these things that are so commonplace to me of, going to third grade and going to your classroom and having to have a Chromebook for the first time in school and having a locker, those are totally normal to me. For him, these are exciting, but also scary because he doesn't know what comes next. He doesn't know what
Mm-hmm.
third grade entails. And so for me to be able to say, just take a step back and say, I understand that there might be some trepidation here. Let's talk
Mm-hmm.
through what's about to happen. We do that for our kids, for our kindergartners, for our elementary students. We need to do that for our customers too. You need to be open and
I
honest. And if they say, hey, I've got it, I'm confident, then you can move on. But open that door because nobody wants to feel stupid and ask the question of like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you please enlighten me? No one wants to raise their hand and admit that. So you have to
Yeah.
open that door for them and make it easy for them to either run through it or move on and say, I've got it covered. I don't need the explanation.
And some naysayers may say, "Hey, this is super juvenile. Like, you know, like an implementation project should have a project plan and blah blah blah." And sure, really complex ones should. Do all of them need that? No. Should all of them at least start at the foundation and the baseline and say, "Hey,
Right.
this is where we're starting. This is where you are." Absolutely. If it comes across as like too basic, whatever, who cares? Like
Right.
you
Then
can
you get
get
through
to
it that
the
much
complex
faster.
stuff.
Move through it that much
Exactly.
faster. You know, it
Exactly.
it also protects you. I mean, if you
Yeah.
don't set the expectations and detail what good looks like at the beginning, you might find yourself at the end of your implementation and onboarding with a really disappointed customer because they had created this thing in their mind that isn't reality. Or they
Hmm.
were sold that and it's not reality. And your job as a CS professional is to set those expectations and then blow them out of the water, not to find out at the end that you missed the mark that you didn't even know existed.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Totally. Um, what when customers come to you and they want to implement digital motions, whether it be automated handoffs or
Mhm.
whatever that may be, what are some of the biggest kind of hurdles that you see customers facing when they're trying to implement this stuff? Are there some consistencies across the board?
I think we all fall into our own traps of just assuming that we can buy a solution, turn it on, and then that's the end of the all done,
Yes.
right? So, even us knowing better, it is hard to remember that you can't just buy a solution and the world's problems are solved. It's about buying a solution, buying the right solution, and then understanding how to maximize its utilization so that you aren't left with shelfware, something that you
Yep.
bought and then never actually use. And that
Hmm.
goes for customer success professionals too. When we're talking to someone who works in CS and they want to better understand their customers and identify who's a flight risk and who's an opportunity for expansion, it's not as simple as just turning it on and letting the robots do their work. That's, I think,
Yeah.
the biggest trap that we all fall into.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. Um, as we kind of round out our discussion, I want to understand a little bit more because you are in the business, as are a lot of others, of advising customer success orgs by
Mhm.
what you do and sharing best practices and things like that. So what are the things that you do to kind of keep yourself informed? What's your content diet, so to speak, and what do you pay attention to?
I focus on being very cross functional. So I listen to a lot of customer success podcasts and a lot of customer success content. I consume a lot of that customer retention, customer acquisition, but I'm also
Mhm.
focused on how can I think outside of my day-to-day activities and focus on strategic. initiatives? How do I connect this to the business? How do I connect this to psychology? How do I find ways to bring in Brené Brown and Simon Sinek and Adam Grant who
Sure.
work in more workplace relationships and vulnerability? So I have a Blinkist subscription, not
Yeah, cool.
sponsored, love Blinkist, they're great. And I focus on books about continuous improvement and building relationships and anything that helps me be more authentic in my experiences with people, that I can relate to them and their interests and truly understand the full holistic picture of what they need beyond a simple implementation process. Simple is probably too small
Sure.
a word. Beyond an implementation process, what is that cross-functional story that sings the whole business, not just one small piece?
Yeah, that's great. You're the first person on the pod that's mentioned Blinkist, which is cool.
Oh, I love
Um,
Blinkist. It's like how I kind of preview the content, get enough to pique my interest, and then I'll read the actual book. So, like, I just did the Atomic Habits Blinkist. I'm like,
sure.
great, this is really cool. I'm going to go through this one. I just did one called Continuous Improvement, and it's all
Mm.
about how you like evolve an organization from the inside. I think I'm actually going to read that one like full instead of just doing the blank. So it
Hmm.
is a secret weapon for sure.
Secret weapon. I love it. That's cool. Um, who in your mind sticks out in the industry as doing cool things in digital CS? Are there any people you'd want to shout out or give kudos to?
So I don't know that she would consider herself customer success,
Uh
but
huh.
when I read her content, I can't help but draw parallels. Tiffany Bova, she is
Mm.
really focused on employee experience right now, and she's talking about how investing in your employees is good for the bottom line. And she touches on so many of the things that I think CS orgs need to know and to think about. So I don't think she would think of herself as in CS, but when I read her content, it just feels like she's a CS thought leader without even knowing.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out to her.
You
This,
will.
by the way, is my secret sauce is I ask these questions on the podcast so that I know who I need to reach out to get them on the podcast. So
Of
thanks for
course,
that.
that's the smart. We call that, so in research, we call that the
That's right.
snowball method. So
Yeah,
how can you make
yeah,
a snowball roll down a hill? Is you ask people who you should call.
that's right.
I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. And then you don't be afraid to ask, right? Because you never know.
The worst thing you can hear
Um,
is no, and then you move on, right?
you move on. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so I've loved this conversation. You have so much insight to bring. I feel like we could probably go on and on, but where can people kind of find you and engage with you? And also, are there any things that you want to call out that you're involved in that you think are super cool?
I would encourage anyone to just connect with me on LinkedIn. I want to have authentic conversations. I want to, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not going to pitch you on our stuff. Our stuff is cool.
Yeah,
I'm not here to pitch you on that. So
yeah.
I want to have authentic conversations. I want to talk to cool people. I want to be inspired by people doing amazing things in the industry. I am always open to a Zoom call. For me, it's that authentic connection that can change the course of my life. The authentic connection with my former professor, now business partner, completely changed the course of my life for the better. And so I'm just
Hmm.
always looking for what is that authentic thing I can help someone achieve and put good into the universe and get good back.
It's amazing. I love it. Well, thank you. This has been an awesome conversation. It's super fun. I've enjoyed it. So much great insight. So we'll have to have you back for sure.
Yeah, follow up with me in a little bit after you talk to Tiffany, and
That's right.
hopefully get her to talk about the customer experience and the employee experience.
Exactly. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, Alyssa.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. Have a good day.
thank you so much. Good talking to you. Bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital Customer Success Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps us to grow and to provide value to a broader audience. You can view the Digital Customer Success definition word map and get more details about the show at digitalcustomersuccess.com. My name is Alex Turkovich. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.